Hey there, welcome back to Texas History. Today we're picking up with video lecture 13, which is over pages 535 to 539. And so we're going to pick up in your notes with Roman numeral 2, migration and everyday life. Now, I would like to mention that these notes are not complete. I'm going to add some notes to this, and I will post them on to your stream page so that you'll have the rest of the notes. So the notes that we are looking at right now and the notes that you've probably downloaded, those are not the full chapter's notes. So I will put up the full chapter on Wednesday, which is when you're supposed to be watching this lecture. All right, so let's go ahead and pick up with migration and everyday life. Immigrants began pouring into Texas. You still have immigrants from Germany, which made up the most European immigrants in Texas. You have Polish immigrants, Italian, Czechoslovakian immigrants that are coming into Texas, and many of them are working as farmers. So most of the immigrants that came into Texas began working as farmers. You also have Mexican immigrants that are fleeing into Texas, trying to escape the Mexican dictator that was in power. They were looking for political freedom. And so you see a large influx of immigrants beginning to come into Texas. In fact, in your textbook, it said that from 1900 to 1920, the population of Texas grew from 3 million to 4.6 million people. That's a pretty big jump for just 20 years. We see that immigrants are still flowing into Texas looking for political and religious freedom. You also should have read about rural life, and if you remember, the term rural means an agricultural region or out in the country, not in the city. Agriculture was still the main source of income for Texans. Like I said earlier, a lot of the immigrants were farmers, but there were a lot of Texans, most of them, that were still farmers. Many workers on Texas farms were hired hands, so that means that a lot of these immigrants, if they weren't able to own their own farm, they would work as hired hands on other farms owned by other people. Many of these hired hands were Mexican Americans and African Americans, and they worked long hours, about 9 to 11 hours for very little pay. It says in your notes that they worked for about $1.50 to $4 for a day. Not very much. Many of you carry way more than $4 in your wallet right now, but that's how much they would earn a day. Very few Texans had plumbing or electricity. This is meant to show you that rural life was not easy. It was very difficult. If you look on page 539, it says the people who faced the most problems in rural life were the women. It says women faced more challenges than almost any other rural group. Besides raising children and taking care of the home, almost half of white farmers' wives also worked in the fields. For women who were not white, this figure was even higher. On farms that enjoyed some success, women worked less in the fields, concentrating instead on gardening, preserving food, and quilting and other crafts. Because not many Texans had indoor plumbing or electricity, that means that they would still have to pump their water from a well and bring it inside to use for cooking, drinking water, or even bathing. Baths were a big production because you're having to transport water from outside to indoors. Travel and communication was also difficult. The radio is what many people would use to get the news, but not a whole lot of people had the radio or even a telephone. Not many people out in the country had cars either. They were still having to rely on horses and wagons. It wasn't until the late 1920s that cars became popular in the United States and that the average American was able to own an automobile. All right, so that does it for today's lesson. Wednesday's homework is to study for your Chapter 21 quiz, which will be given to you on Thursday. So please study your notes the ones that we've covered so far, okay, which would be from Roman numeral 1 all the way through Roman numeral 2. So everything that we've gone over so far, that is what your quiz will be over, and you'll take that on Thursday, April 16th. All right, I hope that you are doing well. I'm praying for your continued health and safety. Really looking forward to seeing you guys again. I hope that can be the school year. We'll see. Take care.